CJ Stroud was on the Pat McAfee Show this week as they were at NRG Stadium. So it was a quick trip for CJ up to these guys' stage, and they did a great job with him. He gave some great answers. I pulled my favorite answers, and we will watch and react. This was CJ. He was asked, how is he so mature and how is he so good at this so young?
Yeah, I appreciate that, man. I really feel like I was kind of groomed into this, going to Ohio State, winning a lot of big games, losing a lot of big games, having to be the leader on the team. When everything hits the fan, everybody's looking at you. And at that point, it was like 108,000 in our stadium. But now it's a little less, but it's still a lot of pressure. But like I said before, I think pressure is a privilege. And I think God put a special spirit in my heart to be able to calm the storm and rally guys around. And I also have a great teammates to do it with me.
That's it's been a running theme this year, and I think CJ's trying not to be too loud about it. He's kind of mentioned a few times that, hey, some of these empty seats, I understand it's been rough here. It's going to be awesome someday when we can pack this stadium. But he's also dropped it a couple times that, man, all right, at Ohio State, it's one of the craziest atmospheres. These are my words, not his. But he's kind of alluded to the fact that at Ohio State, it's one of the craziest atmospheres there is. And you got 108,000 really loud, really enthusiastic people at your games. It's been, I think, for him and Will Anderson and some of the other guys, it's been a little bit of a drop off to see exactly how it can be in the NFL at times. That it's not always, you're not in the horseshoe. But and by the way, Pat McAfee has always been very complimentary of NRG Stadium, and I think CJ in one of these clips references some of the things that Pat McAfee has said about it. Because when McAfee was playing, that was back when things were still pretty good and competitive, and it got really super loud in that stadium, which hopefully it will this week. Next one was CJ on that pass to Nico, but McAfee just gushing about the fadeaway would be either an intentional grounding or an interception where it looked like CJ just was throwing it up for a prayer and ended up being a Nico Collins reception. CJ described exactly what happened on that play.
They were in man-to-man coverage, and they rolled the safety down, so he took away my first option. I went to my second option, and they were in man, so he did a good job of having sticky coverage. So at that point, I'm trying to find my check down, and check downs aren't always great in man-to-man coverage because they're matching. So I knew there was time to scramble. So I tried to step up and scramble, and I think somebody got loose. So I spent left, tried to find a way out. And DeForest Buckner, he's a heck of a player. A lot of respect for that guy. He's a unit. He's like 6'10", 350. He's moving fast as heck. So I got up out of there, and I kind of seen Nico take off. And I was like, I don't have much, but I'm going to just try to give him a shot. And with that guy, man, you give him a shot, he's going to go make a play.
Nico talked about it in the postgame. That was just pure scramble drill, right? Him and Nico have formed that relationship over time. He talked earlier this week about how he just flat out told Nico that he could tell he was going to be a star and he needed to be a star. And Nico, or CJ, talks all the time about feeding those guys, literally feeding them. He needs to put food on his receiver's table. He wants to get them paid. They have formed that relationship, and that's a part of. I'm intrigued to watch Nico versus this Browns defense, where it's going to be a lot tougher than it was last week. But if Robert Woods can come back and be at least one option to loosen things up, I really want to see these guys versus this defense. CJ and Nico versus this defense. It's going to be a test. And some of that kind of unspoken sixth sense communication could be huge and vital in this game. If Nico gets close to 100 yards receiving in this game, I'm going to be really cool with that. He doesn't have to have an otherworldly performance. It's just going to be a hard fought. It's going to be a hard fought 100 yards if he gets it, but it's going to open up things for hopefully a lot of other people. They were talking about the S2 cognition test, and honestly, they kind of got into it where. So for those of you who weren't paying attention during draft season, the S2 cognition test supposedly tests players' ability to track multiple moving objects at once. It's not an intelligence test. And even though knowing all we know about how intelligence tests themselves are fallible and that there's plenty of smart people that do poorly on standardized tests and vice versa, it's not an intelligence test, this S2 cognition test. And yet people were taking the low S2 cognition test and acting like it was a low IQ score. So I'm insulted on that front. I'm also insulted by the fact that even people who were taking it as a visual cognition test took it as literally and as seriously as they did. They'd never heard of it before, and yet they were acting like it was the be-all, end-all to quarterback diagnostic tests. It was absurd. CJ performed really poorly on it. Not an intelligence test. And the McAfee guys were having fun with it, but they kind of were saying like, "Oh, I guess you should draft the dumbest guy in football because apparently that's what, or the dumbest guy at the test." It's not an intelligence test. Anyway, here's CJ on that S2 test.
I always say that the eye in the sky don't lie. So you watch the film, you put on the tape, even from college, like you can't play at Ohio State and under Coach Day, who's a world-renowned offensive coordinator, play caller. His offense is pretty deep when it comes to being knowledgeable. You have to know everything. I even had more responsibilities in college than I do now in this offense, in this scheme. So.
Yeah, but that means you're only going to get better, which sucks for us.
Pat McAfee's an indie guy, as are his buddies there. So they were kind of having fun with just the fact that CJ's really good and going to be in the division for a long time and how much that sucks for them. We talked about this a lot, and I know the Ohio people here know this. Like the offense with any given coordinator is going to change based on who the quarterback is and what he can handle. And the offense was going to be different for Cardale Jones than it was for Justin Fields or for CJ Stroud or for anybody else. So I think that part of it was way overblown. I do think, though, aside from people trying to compare Ohio State quarterback to Ohio State quarterback, the thing that was lost in the mix weirdly so last year was that the Ohio State offense, yes, it had a lot of really good receivers that made the level of difficulty easier in some respects. But the offense itself was plenty complex by college standards, and they had option routes. They had a lot of things that they certainly don't do at Clemson that scouts looked at and saw as evidence that CJ could handle a certain amount of processing above and beyond. With some quarterbacks in some places, you just can't tell. So anyway, it's all in the past now. RIP S2 cognition test. Oh, the other big thing, too, was that there's only a certain number of teams that are allowed to subscribe to that test. The S2 does that to try to, create a competitive advantage. And the Texans are not one of them. The Panthers are. The Panthers, they love them some S2. They pay probably a lot of money for it. The Texans do not pay for that subscription. This is him on, he's excited to see NRG Stadium packed.
I'm excited to see this place packed, man.
It's going to be loud.
It's going to be loud, really loud. I know you said that this is probably the loudest stadium you played in.
Ever, yeah.
Yeah, I think even just to piggyback off what you said, playing in Indianapolis, that was probably the loudest stadium I played in NFL.
Wow.
So that was like a college atmosphere.
How about that? That's a lot.
I love that time. I like being the villain, like run out to the booze, and you guys had the light show going on, a lot of cute stuff.
They made you. What was that?
A lot of cute stuff.
It was.
He had fun with them. Like he knew it's like the thing by now is like guys have watched the McAfee Show enough that they know that they can go and have fun, and like any of the ribbing and stuff is just going to be it's like obviously like when they were talking about him being dumb, obviously he wasn't taking that as them actually calling them dumb. Like the fact that McAfee, I know, has said that before, that NRG is really loud. And I don't know if CJ saw that or if they were talking about that beforehand. I do feel like CJ has kind of made it one of his personal missions to change the environment in there and get it back to what it had been before. I do think that, like, honestly, I think it needs to be our personal mission to be sure we get it back to, and maybe better, because we are a late arriving bunch here in Houston. Like, because let's not forget, his agent is David Mulligetta, who's awesome at getting guys lots and lots of money, even if it means moving them back to their hometown of LA or something. So I just don't want to, I'm just putting it out there. Just get there and yell your faces off, damn it. Next question. Next answer was about using doubters as motivation. They had brought up that Stephen A. Smith has gushed about CJ Stroud, but he also doesn't think that a rookie quarterback can do well in the playoffs. And they played that up a little bit. And CJ wasn't really taking the bait, but he did talk about using haters as motivation.
Like, any motivation is good motivation, So I think it'll be a lie. People say they don't listen to the media, or like, of course, like we don't necessarily care, but everybody hears it. Like the day and age where we live in, social media, you have access to like everything, TV, your phone, Instagram, Twitter, whatever. I personally try to log out to everything, but people text me stuff and things. So you hear about it and you're like, man, like I wonder why they think like that. Let me go prove them wrong. But our mindset here, let's prove ourselves right. We knew what we had in this locker room.
Like using, I mean, like Browns fans know this, going back to Johnny Manziel, or really honestly like a young Baker Mayfield. Using your haters as fuel for motivation is a dicey proposition. I think CJ has talked about how he tries to stay off social media as much as possible. It's the damn friends and family. Like I don't know why they think they're doing dudes a favor by forwarding hate to them. They think that their friend, because they love him, needs to know that somebody is saying about this. Stop it. It doesn't do anybody any good. Like, it doesn't do anybody any good. All it does is it's one more negative voice in their head, especially if they're trying to ignore it as much as possible. They don't need to hear that. And that's why, like, if you're a young athlete, just tell your friends and family, please, I would appreciate it if you just don't send me that negativity. I don't need it in my life. You'd probably be happier too as a friend and family member if you try to ignore the negativity as much as possible. It goes for just about anybody in life these days. Next question. Oh, he was asked about DeMeco Ryans. It was in the vein of like people wondered about hiring a defensive coach in DeMeco Ryans. It seems like he's been the perfect fit.
I said it before, but I think DeMeco was a perfect person for this job. He was the one, when I met him, he was like, this is the only job he wanted, to be a head coach, because he played for the Texans. He wanted to uplift the city of Houston. So I would say, man, like, if you're looking for a head coach, you want to look for somebody who cares. Cares about the city, cares about winning, cares about his players, has been in the position before that he's done that before, So when I look at DeMeco, like, of course, like, yeah, we're figuring out a lot of stuff together, but man, like the poise that he has, the trust that he puts in his players, the accountability that he holds us to, the standard that he sets, every day you see him put constant work in, so it's nothing to do but just follow that, and to be a great leader, you have to be a great follower as well. So that's all I do with him, man. I listen to him a lot. He's a man of God. He definitely cares about his players. He always asks us what we want instead of just putting things out there. He puts a multitude of things on the table, from just team issues or like even locker room stuff. Like we need a new shower heads. He got us new shower heads, So like just little stuff. And some head coaches
that's good. That's good baby face move.
Yeah.
No, yeah. So like that even like it's a small thing that makes your players want to play for you a little harder, So
Captain Queeg, right? And Catch 22. Am I getting those right, or am I mixing up my old books again? I think in Catch 22, one of the issues was that the shower heads were like pathetic and like nobody was allowed to shower, and that was one of the reasons they hated Captain Queeg. So DeMeco Ryans, the opposite of Captain Queeg, and everybody feel free to correct me there in the comments on that one. As far as DeMeco and his demeanor, the cool thing about DeMeco is that I think he is one of those coaches that you can be soft-spoken isn't the right word, because he's not soft-spoken, but he's not a yeller and he's not a screamer, but he holds guys to a very, very high standard. And I think he's somebody who commands respect in such a way that it doesn't really matter like how few of the old school coaching mentalities or stereotypes he fits. He just gets the best out of guys, partly because they crave his respect, but also because he has really high standards, and he's gonna coach them very aggressively on the actual problem. One of my favorite coaches ever, who was like old school hard ass in a lot of ways, but just awesome, Frank Gantz Sr. Attack the problem, not the person. So when he was attacking something, like, he always made it very clear, I'm attacking a problem. We've got a common problem. I'm not attacking the person. I'm attacking the problem. And like, that's very much a DeMeco thing. He's going to attack problems. He's not going to attack the person. And guys respect that. They feel that. And then you're in alliance with each other. As I'm getting my ass chewed by Frank Gantz Sr., I realize, like, hey, him and I are on the same side. He's not attacking me. He might be using pronouns to make it sound like he's attacking me, but he's actually attacking a problem. And next was about, CJ and his approach going into the Georgia game. This was after a really long conversation about he used to be very superstitious, and then he changed his pregame routine into being something that was a little bit less superstitious and more just about getting warmed up and more about ritual. Something I always recommend that if you're superstitious at all, just see if maybe what you are is just more about the ritual of it, because there's a lot of reasons to get into rituals and to get yourself into a mindset. But you don't necessarily, like, if you start believing you have to hit a certain number of free throws or you're going to have a horrible game or something like that, that can be counterproductive. But they sprung off of that onto his mental approach going into the Georgia game last year, in which they lost, but CJ played very well.
I came into that game like, I would say I wouldn't say that was probably my best college game. I think that was my most free game. Where like I was like, man, whatever happens, I don't really care. I'm gonna go out with no regrets.
So mentally, you felt
good. Let's let go, you know, because it's a lot of pressure playing at Ohio State, man. Losing one game, especially like the games we lost, like we're still a really good team, but like our fan base, everybody told us like we sucked at that point, you know. So it was like I was like, man, you know what? And a lot of our fans stuck true. It's like the social media fans. That's what I call it. Like you'll go to and you'll see a stadium, and Coach Day used to tell me this, like you could think the whole stadium hates you. They really don't. Our fans love us, you know. But losing that game doesn't help. And it's like those 500 negative fans that are in the
which is a lot of scrolls.
That was a really good point that McAfee made when he said it's a lot of scrolls. Those 500 fans, when he says it's a lot of scrolls, what he meant was like that takes a lot of time to scroll down through all those hates. If it's 500 people leaving negative comments, you end up scrolling down and reading a whole bunch of negativity, and that just seeps into your brain. That's a good message by Ryan Day, that how people feel on social media. Like it's often a very loud and vocal and you know, funny, but vocal and loud minority that's viciously critical. And then even a lot of the people, whether it's on social media or just in general, like it's passing, you know, like they're mad and they're angry, but they don't actually hate you. That's one of the best things about having kids, is that you really learn and get comfortable not caring about somebody who temporarily hates you. So if you raise a kid, and at any given time, you know, when they're young, they're going to hate you. And like they really hate you, you know? They don't have the ability to sustain it yet. But in that moment, like when you're not giving them what they really want, but you know, and you're comfortable just not giving them that because it's not good for them, they hate you. And you learn like, oh, okay, well, that's all right. They're not going anywhere. I just, they'll love me eventually, like in 10 minutes, whatever. That can help, but I don't advise that to like high school athletes. Don't go out and have a kid just so you can learn how to deal with hate better. So that was CJ on the Pat McAfee Show. Pat McAfee is a huge fan of his, obviously. And I think those two will probably be seeing each other a lot more in years to come, as long as Pat sticks around on ESPN, if he so chooses. I'm Seth Payne. I played 10 years in the NFL. I played 5 years for the Texans, and I have this YouTube channel. I also do sports radio on Sports Radio 610 from 6 to 10 a.m. every morning. If you like, please subscribe, tell a friend. Everybody have a great week. Thank you.